He faced the dark mahogany table while three men traded silence and salvation in whispers tonight. The contract promised 12 years erased in 48 hours. The pen hovered. A gray uniform passed and murmured, "Don't sign." 5 black cars idled far below, red lights ticking seconds. Ink stalled, breath tightened, and the room tilted. Some mistakes don't turn back. Not ever. The mahogany table stretches like a dark river between 3 men who've killed for less than what's written on these papers. Vincent "Vinny" Romano adjusts his gold cufflinks, the movement deliberate, practiced. Across from him, Federal Judge Harrison Walsh slides documents from a leather briefcase with surgical precision. Between them sits Detective Captain Michael Torres, his badge deliberately visible on the table like a promise. The penthouse conference room overlooks Manhattan's glittering chaos, but inside, silence reigns supreme. No phones, no recordings, just 3 men reshaping the balance of power in New York City. Vincent has been here before, in rooms where words carry the weight of bullets and signatures seal fates. But tonight feels different. Tonight the city below seems to pulse with anticipation, as if even the concrete knows something significant is about to happen. The immunity deal covers everything. Judge Walsh speaks without looking up from the contracts. His voice carries the authority of someone who sent hundreds to prison with nothing more than a gavel. Racketeering, money laundering, conspiracy charges from the past 12 years. Clean slate. Vinny's fingers drum once against the wood. Once. The sound echoes like a gunshot in the sterile atmosphere. He's learned to control every gesture, every breath, every micro-expression that might betray weakness. In his world, vulnerability is currency, and he spent decades refusing to pay that price. And in return, information on the Castellano family operations. Torres answers, his voice steady but his eyes never quite meeting Vinny's. The detective's hands rest flat against the table, betraying nothing. But Vinny notices the slight tremor in the man's left index finger. Fear, or excitement. Names, locations, financial structures, everything you know about their Atlantic Coast distribution network. The pen rests heavy in Vinny's hand. 28 years building his empire, watching friends disappear into federal custody or shallow graves. Now salvation sits before him in triplicate, stamped with official seals that promise freedom. His lawyer, Bobby Chen, nods from the corner, but something in Bobby's posture suggests calculation rather than relief. The man who's kept Vinny out of prison for 2 decades suddenly looks like he's attending a funeral. Timeline? Vinny asks, though he already knows time isn't really the issue. Time never is. It's about choices, consequences, and the weight of betrayal that sits in your chest like swallowed glass. 48 hours after signing. Walsh answers, finally looking up. His gray eyes hold no warmth, no judgment. Just the cold efficiency of a system that chews up men like Vinny and spits out court transcripts. You'll be relocated, new identity, federal protection for life. Your family too. The family. Vinny thinks of Isabella, his daughter studying pre-law at NYU, believing her father imports Italian leather goods. Thinks of his wife Carmen, who still kisses him goodbye each morning, despite knowing exactly what he is. Protection for them means admitting they need it. It means confessing that his choices have painted targets on their backs in permanent ink. Mr. Romano? Torres checks his watch, the gesture seemingly casual but loaded with pressure. The grand jury convenes Thursday. This offer expires with their session. Vinny lifts the pen. The weight feels wrong. Too light for something that will bury the Castellanos and everyone connected to them, including men who've been loyal to him since they were kids running numbers in Brooklyn's back alleys. Men who trusted him with their lives, their families, their futures. The ink inside this plastic tube will flow like blood across those bonds. The door opens with a soft click. Maria Santos enters, pushing her cleaning cart with practiced invisibility. Her maintenance uniform bears the building's logo. Her movements economic and purposeful. She's the kind of person powerful men train themselves not to see. Part of the city's invisible infrastructure that keeps their world polished and pristine. None of the 3 men acknowledge her presence. In their calculation, she doesn't exist. "Sorry, gentlemen," she whispers in accented English, her voice carrying the weight of apology that comes from a lifetime of seeking permission to exist in spaces that weren't built for her. "Just need to empty the wastebaskets 2 minutes." Walsh waves dismissively without looking up, already returning his attention to the legal language that will reshape Vinny's world. Torres continues reading, his finger tracing clauses that promise protection in exchange for destruction. Vinny's attention remains fixed on the signature line that will transform him from predator to informant, from wolf to sheep in witness protection clothing. Maria approaches Vinny's chair, her movements creating a careful choreography around the table's perimeter. 23 years she's been cleaning these towers of power, invisible among the suits and briefcases and closed-door decisions that reshape the city's underground. As she bends to replace the liner in the wastebasket beside his chair, her movements deliberate and practiced. Her voice drops to barely a breath. "Don't sign it. It's a setup." The pen freezes in Vinny's hand. His eyes find hers in the reflection of the conference room's dark window. Maria's face shows nothing but professional concentration as she continues her task, but something in her posture has shifted, a tension that speaks of knowledge, of danger recognized and shared at great personal cost. "Something wrong, Vincent?" Bobby asks from across the room, his voice carrying the careful neutrality of a man who survived by reading the subtlest changes in his client's demeanor. The pen slips from Vinny's fingers, clattering against the polished mahogany like dice hitting concrete. In the sudden silence, Maria straightens, ties the garbage bag with methodical precision, and continues her route around the table. Her movements remain steady, professional, but Vinny catches something else now. The way she positions herself to avoid direct camera angles. The manner in which she keeps her back to Walsh and Torres, while maintaining visual contact with the exit. "Just reconsidering the timeline," Vinny manages, his voice controlled but his pulse hammering against his collar. Every instinct screams danger, but the source remains unclear. Is it Maria's warning, or the situation itself? In his world, paranoia is survival, but so is knowing when to act on information that could save or damn you. Walsh looks up sharply, his gray eyes narrowing with the precision of a man who's watched countless defendants crack under pressure. "Mr. Romano, this agreement has been negotiated for 6 months. Every clause has been reviewed by your counsel. What exactly requires reconsideration?" Maria continues her methodical circuit around the room, but Vinny's world has shifted on its axis. 34 years in this business have taught him to read danger in the tilt of a head, the pause before an answer, the way someone holds their shoulders when they're lying. This woman knows something. The question burning through his chest is whether that knowledge will save him or destroy him. Torres clears his throat, a sound that cuts through the tension like a blade. "Perhaps we should take a brief recess. Allow Mr. Romano time to collect his thoughts." The detective's suggestion carries the weight of authority, but underneath lurks something else. Impatience. Or urgency. "No." Vinny's voice emerges steady, controlled. "I'd like to review Section 12 once more. The asset forfeiture clauses." He reaches for the document stack, buying time while his mind races through possibilities. Maria finishes collecting the waste and moves toward the door, but something in her posture suggests she's listening to every word. Walsh's fingers tap against his briefcase in a rhythm that speaks of barely contained irritation. "Mr. Romano, asset forfeiture is standard in these agreements. You retain personal property acquired through legitimate means. Everything else becomes federal property. This has been discussed extensively. Humor me." Vinny spreads the papers across the mahogany surface, his movements deliberate. In the reflection of the polished wood, he watches Maria pause at the door. Her hand rests on the handle, but she doesn't turn it. She's waiting for something. Bobby Chen approaches the table, his expensive shoes silent against the thick carpet. "Vincent, perhaps we should schedule another meeting tomorrow. Give you time to review everything with fresh eyes." The lawyer's tone carries professional concern, but his body language suggests something different. Relief, maybe, as if postponement serves his interests more than his clients'. "Tomorrow might be too late," Torres interjects, checking his watch again. The gesture has become compulsive, mechanical. The federal prosecutor's office operates on strict timelines. Delay could be interpreted as bad faith. Vinny looks up from the documents, his gaze moving between the 3 men arranged around him like pieces on a chessboard. Each face reveals nothing, yet everything. Walsh's impatience feels genuine, the frustrated efficiency of a man accustomed to compliance. Torres radiates nervous energy, the kind that comes from pressure applied from above. And Bobby, his own lawyer, sits with the careful stillness of someone walking through a minefield. "Maria." Vinny's voice cuts through the room's tension like a knife through silk. The cleaning woman turns, her dark eyes meeting his with surprising directness. "Could you empty the shredder bin as well?" Corner office. "It's not a request. In Vinny's world, nothing ever is." "Of course, Mr. Romano." Maria's voice remains steady, professional, but something flickers behind her eyes. Recognition, understanding. She moves toward the corner office, her cartwheels rolling across the carpet with mechanical precision. Walsh exchanges a glance with Torres, a silent communication that lasts perhaps 2 seconds but feels loaded with meaning. "Mr. Romano, perhaps we should maintain focus on the matter at hand. Time is a factor here." "Time is always a factor, Judge." Vinny's response carries the weight of experience, of decades spent navigating situations where minutes meant the difference between freedom and a shallow grave. But accuracy matters more. In the corner office, Maria works with practiced efficiency. Through the glass partition, Vinny watches her movements, noting the way she positions herself to remain visible while creating physical distance from the 3 men at the table. She knows something. The certainty settles in his chest like cold steel. Bobby approaches, his voice dropping to conference room confidential. "Vincent, I've reviewed every clause. The agreement is solid. Protection, immunity, relocation. Everything we discussed." "Everything you discussed," Vinny corrects, his tone carrying subtle emphasis that makes Bobby's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. "I don't recall being consulted on timeline." "The timeline is federal, not negotiable," Torres adds, standing and moving to the window that overlooks the city's glittering maze. "Grand jury schedules aren't flexible." Vinny studies the detective's reflection in the glass, noting the tension in his shoulders, the way his right hand unconsciously moves toward his jacket's inside pocket. Nervous habit or easy weapon access? In Vinny's experience, the distinction often proves meaningless until it's too late. Maria emerges from the corner office, her task complete. As she passes behind Vinny's chair, she pauses to straighten papers that don't need straightening, her movement bringing her close enough to speak without being overheard. "Storage room, 3rd floor, 10 minutes." The words are barely audible, delivered with the same professional attention she gives to arranging documents. She continues toward the exit, but Vinny's hand moves almost imperceptibly, fingers drumming once against the table's edge. A signal. Maria stops, ostensibly to check her cart's supplies, but her position allows clear sightlines to all 3 men. "Gentlemen, I need a brief break," Vinny announces, standing with the fluid grace of someone who's spent decades projecting authority. "Personal matter. 5 minutes. Walsh's expression tightens. "Mr. Romano, we're on a schedule here." 5 minutes. Vinny repeats, his tone carrying the kind of finality that ends conversations rather than starting them. "Unless you'd prefer to reschedule entirely." The threat hangs in the air like smoke. Torres and Walsh exchange another look, this one lasting longer, carrying more weight. Bobby seems to shrink into his chair, suddenly fascinated by his legal pad's margins. 5 minutes, Walsh concedes, his voice clipped with professional frustration. Vinny moves toward the door with measured steps, his pace neither hurried nor casual. In his peripheral vision, he notes Torres reaching for his phone, fingers moving with urgent precision. Walsh closes the document folder, his movements sharp with barely contained irritation. Bobby simply stares at the table's polished surface as if reading secrets in the wood grain. The hallway outside carries the sterile quiet of corporate power, all neutral colors and efficient lighting designed to inspire confidence rather than comfort. Vinny walks toward the elevator bank, his footsteps echoing against marble that costs more per square foot than most people earn in a month. But instead of calling the elevator, he turns toward the stairwell. The storage room on the 3rd floor exists in the building's forgotten spaces, tucked between maintenance equipment and forgotten furniture. Vinny opens the door to find Maria waiting, her cleaning cart positioned to block the entrance from casual observation. "Talk," he says, closing the door behind him. Maria turns to face him fully for the first time, and Vinny sees past the uniform, past the careful invisibility she wears like armor. Her eyes hold intelligence, calculation, and something else. Fear, but not of him. "I work all the floors, I hear things." Her accent thickens slightly now that she's not performing professional invisibility. 3 weeks ago I heard your lawyer talking with Torres. Private conversation. They think you don't know about the 2nd investigation. Vinny's blood turns to ice water. 2nd investigation. Federal task force. Separate from this deal. They're building a case against you using information from this immunity agreement. The signatures make it legal evidence. Maria's voice gains strength as she continues, as if speaking the truth aloud gives her power. You sign tonight? You give them everything they need to prosecute you anyway. The storage room's fluorescent lights hum overhead, casting harsh shadows that make Maria's face appear older, more weathered. But her eyes remain steady, holding Vinny's gaze with surprising courage. Why tell me this? Vinny asks, though part of him already knows the answer will complicate everything. Because they killed my brother. The words hit like physical blows. Maria's voice doesn't break, doesn't waver, but something in her posture suggests the cost of speaking this truth. Carlos worked security for the Castellanos. Low level, just checking IDs at their social club. When the feds started building their case, they needed someone inside. Someone invisible. Her hands clench into fists. They pressured Carlos. Threatened deportation for our entire family. He was 19. Vinny waits. In his experience, rushing these moments only destroys the truth they contain. He wore a wire for 6 months. Fed them information about club operations, meeting schedules, financial transactions. Small stuff, but enough. Maria's voice hardens. Then someone found out. They made it look like a robbery. 3 bullets. Close range. The storage room feels smaller now, the air thicker. Vinny understands betrayal, has orchestrated it, survived it, weaponized it. But this feels different. Personal in a way that transcends business calculations. The same task force that pressured Carlos is running this immunity deal. Same agents, same methods. They don't want your cooperation, Mr. Romano. They want your confession. Vinny studies Maria's face in the storage room's harsh fluorescent light, searching for deception in the lines around her eyes, the set of her jaw, the way she holds her shoulders. 34 years in a business built on lies has taught him to read people like medical charts, cataloging symptoms of betrayal before they metastasize into bullets. But Maria's grief feels authentic, raw in a way that's difficult to fabricate. Proof, he says simply. Maria reaches into her uniform's breast pocket, extracting a folded photograph and a small recording device no bigger than a cigarette lighter. The photo shows a young man in security uniform, his smile wide and genuine, arm draped around Maria's shoulders outside what appears to be a church. Brothers. The resemblance is unmistakable in the bone structure, the way they both tilt their heads slightly to the left. Carlos Martinez, 21 years old when they killed him, Maria says, her voice steady but her fingers trembling slightly as she handles the photograph. This was taken 3 days before he died. He was scared, wanted to stop cooperating, but they threatened our mother's immigration status. She activates the recording device with practiced precision. The audio quality is poor, muffled, but the voices are clear enough. Torres speaking with someone whose voice Vinny doesn't recognize, discussing surveillance schedules and evidence-gathering procedures. The conversation includes specific mention of the immunity deal, serving as both carrot and stick, a method to extract confession while maintaining legal cover for prosecution. How long have you been recording conversations? 6 months. Since Carlos died. Maria's grip tightens on the device. I applied for this job specifically. Maintenance staff are invisible in buildings like this. Powerful people forget we exist, speak freely around us. The storage room feels smaller now, the walls pressing in with the weight of conspiracy and counter-conspiracy. Vinny recognizes the cold logic of Maria's approach, the patient construction of evidence that could destroy or protect depending on how it's deployed. In another life, she might have made an excellent operative. What do you want? Justice for Carlos. And to prevent them from doing to you what they did to him. Maria's eyes hold steady contact with his. I've heard enough conversations to know you're not just another criminal, Mr. Romano. You have principles, limits. The Castellanos don't. Vinny almost smiles at that. Principles and limits. As if the distinction between honorable and dishonorable violence means anything to the families of the dead. But he understands her perspective. In a world of predators, some maintain codes while others operate purely on appetite. The immunity deal is designed to fail, Maria continues, her voice gaining confidence. They'll honor it long enough to extract everything you know about Castellano operations, then prosecute you using evidence obtained through the agreement itself. Double jeopardy doesn't apply if they can prove the initial deal was signed under false pretenses. And my lawyer, Bobby Chen, has been cooperating with federal investigators for 8 months. They have him on tax evasion charges, using that leverage to ensure he guides you toward signing. Maria's words carry the weight of certainty. I've heard him discussing your case with Torres multiple times. Strategy sessions disguised as legal consultation. The betrayal settles in Vinny's chest like swallowed glass. Bobby has been his attorney for 12 years, handled everything from minor assault charges to major racketeering investigations. The man who's kept him out of federal prison is the same one maneuvering him into it. Recording device, Vinny says, extending his hand. Maria hesitates. This is the only evidence I have. I'm not taking it. I want to make a copy. She passes him the device, and he examines it with professional interest. Standard digital recorder, the kind available at any electronics store, but modified with an extended range microphone capable of picking up conversations from significant distances. The kind of modification that requires technical knowledge and careful planning. You've done this before. I worked electronics assembly before Carlos died. Had to learn surveillance equipment to understand how they were monitoring him. Maria's voice carries bitter pride. Took me 3 months to figure out their communication patterns. Another 2 to start intercepting conversations. Vinny pockets the device temporarily, his mind racing through implications and possibilities. Maria has handed him a weapon, but weapons are only effective if wielded properly. The question becomes whether using this information saves him or simply transfers the danger to someone else. The meeting upstairs. How much time do we have? Torres was supposed to call his handler after you signed. When that call doesn't come, they'll know something changed. Maria checks her watch, the gesture nervous but controlled. Maybe 20 minutes before they start asking questions you can't answer easily. 20 minutes to reshape the balance of power, to transform from victim to predator. Vinny's mind shifts into operational mode, cataloging resources and calculating probabilities. Maria represents an asset but also a liability. Her knowledge makes her valuable, but her emotional investment makes her unpredictable. Your family, immigration status legitimate? My mother and youngest sister, yes. But they've been here so long, their status could be challenged if someone wanted to pressure us. Maria's answer reveals the vulnerability that keeps her in line, the leverage that transforms courage into compliance. After tonight, that won't be an issue. It's not quite a promise, more an acknowledgement of obligation. Vinny understands debt, the way favors create bonds stronger than blood. Maria has risked everything to warn him. That creates responsibility, the kind that must be honored regardless of personal cost. They exit the storage room separately. Maria first with her cart, maintaining the careful choreography of invisibility. Vinny follows 2 minutes later, using the time to arrange his expression into appropriate concern rather than the cold calculation that now drives his thoughts. The elevator ride to the penthouse feels longer than usual, each floor marking another second closer to confrontation. When the doors open, Vinny finds the conference room exactly as he left it. Walsh reading documents with professional efficiency, Torres speaking quietly into his phone near the window, Bobby Chen reviewing legal notes that suddenly seem far more sinister. Feeling better? Bobby asks as Vinny retakes his seat. Much better. Clear head. Fresh perspective. Vinny arranges the immunity papers before him, his movements deliberate and measured. Actually, I'd like to make a small modification to Section 18. Walsh looks up sharply. Mr. Romano, we've discussed the non-negotiable nature of this agreement. Nothing major, just a clarification regarding asset disclosure timelines. Vinny's tone remains conversational, but his eyes never leave Bobby's face. I want to ensure my cooperation is as comprehensive as possible. Torres closes his phone, approaching the table with renewed energy. What kind of clarification? Well, for instance, if I've been aware of federal investigation activities targeting my organization, when exactly should I disclose that information? Vinny watches Bobby's face carefully, noting the slight tightening around his eyes. And what if I have evidence of prosecutorial misconduct or attorney-client privilege violations? The room's temperature seems to drop several degrees. Walsh and Torres exchange glances that last several seconds longer than necessary. Bobby's pen stops moving across his legal pad, frozen in mid-sentence. Mr. Romano, Walsh speaks carefully. Are you suggesting you have knowledge of improper federal investigation techniques? I'm suggesting nothing, Judge. Simply asking for clarification on disclosure requirements. Vinny smiles, the expression carrying no warmth whatsoever. After all, complete cooperation works both ways, doesn't it? In the building's invisible spaces, Maria continues her rounds, but now her movements carry different purpose. The recording device in her pocket captures every word, filtering through the conference room's supposedly soundproof walls. Justice for Carlos has taken on new dimensions, evolved beyond simple revenge into something more systematic, more devastating. The immunity deal still sits unsigned on the mahogany table, but the balance of power has shifted in ways none of the three federal representatives anticipated. They came to catch a fish and discovered they'd hooked a shark. All right, we've reached the middle of our story, and I can feel the tension building. If you're enjoying this psychological chess match between Vinny and the feds and you're curious about what Maria's recordings might reveal, consider subscribing to see how this power struggle unfolds. But here's what I really want to know. If you were in Vinny's position right now with evidence of betrayal from your own lawyer and the feds planning to double-cross you, would you play it safe and walk away? Or would you turn the tables and go on the offensive? Drop your thoughts below because this moral dilemma is about to get a lot more complicated. Torres closes his phone with deliberate precision, but Vinny catches the tremor in his fingers. Fear has a smell in closed rooms, metallic and sharp, cutting through expensive cologne and leather furniture polish. The detective's handler isn't answering, or worse, is providing instructions that don't align with the evening's carefully orchestrated plan. Perhaps we should address your concerns directly, Mr. Romano, Walsh says, his judicial composure cracking slightly around the edges. What specific evidence are you referencing? Vinny reaches into his jacket pocket, withdrawing Maria's recording device with theatrical slowness. The small black rectangle sits on the mahogany table like a grenade with the pin pulled, its presence transforming the room's power dynamics in ways that ripple outward like shockwaves. Audio recordings, conversations between federal agents discussing prosecutorial misconduct, attorney-client privilege violations, and conspiracy to obtain evidence through fraudulent immunity agreements. Vinny's voice carries the cold precision of a man who's spent decades delivering ultimatums. Would you like to hear them? Bobby Chen's face drains of color, his expensive tan fading to something resembling parchment. His legal pad slips from nerveless fingers, scattering across the carpet with the soft whisper of falling leaves. The man who's guided Vinny through 12 years of legal minefields suddenly looks like he's staring into his own grave. That's impossible, Torres says, but his voice lacks conviction. Federal communications are encrypted, surveillance-resistant. Are conversations in this building surveillance-resistant? Vinny asks, his tone carrying mock curiosity. Because I have 6 months of recordings from various floors, including some very interesting discussions about evidence tampering and witness intimidation. Walsh stands abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a sound like fingernails on stone. Mr. Romano, if you're in possession of illegally obtained surveillance materials, that constitutes a federal crime. We're obligated to confiscate that device and place you under arrest. Are you? Vinny's smile contains no warmth, only the promise of mutually assured destruction. Because my understanding is that federal agents operating under assumed authority while conspiring to violate constitutional protections have limited enforcement capabilities. The room falls silent except for the building's mechanical breathing, air conditioning cycling through vents that might or might not conceal additional recording equipment. Each man recalculates odds, reassesses loyalties, measures the distance between survival and catastrophe. Torres moves first, his hand sliding toward his jacket's interior pocket where standard-issue federal weaponry rests in easy reach. But Vinny's movement is faster, more practiced. His own weapon appears with the fluid grace of long experience, barrel centered on Torres's chest before the detective's fingers reach metal. Slowly, Vinny suggests, his voice carrying the conversational tone of someone discussing weather rather than mortality. Hands visible, breathing steady. Bobby Chen whimpers, a sound that escapes his throat like air from a punctured tire. The lawyer who's negotiated with prosecutors and federal judges suddenly confronts the reality that his client has never been domesticated, only temporarily contained. This escalates nothing, Walsh says carefully, his judicial training asserting itself even under extreme stress. Violence solves nothing, creates additional problems. Violence creates clarity. Vinny corrects, his weapon never wavering from Torres's center mass. It clarifies priorities, eliminates ambiguity, focuses attention on essential elements. Through the conference room's glass walls, Maria appears in the hallway, pushing her cart with the same methodical precision she's maintained throughout the evening. But now her movements carry additional purpose. She pauses at specific locations, adjusting cleaning supplies while positioning herself to observe potential escape routes and identify additional security personnel. The recordings, Walsh says, his voice steady but his eyes tracking between Vinny's face and the weapon in his hand. What do you want? Justice, Vinny replies, though the word carries different meanings depending on perspective. My lawyer has been feeding information to federal investigators for 8 months. You've been planning to prosecute me using evidence obtained through fraudulent immunity agreements. Someone needs to pay for those choices. Torres's breathing has become shallow, rapid, the physiological response of someone calculating survival odds in real time. Romano, you're a businessman. This is business. We can negotiate new terms, restructure the agreement. Business requires trust. You've demonstrated that trust is impossible. Vinny's finger rests lightly against the trigger. Not enough pressure to fire, but sufficient to convey seriousness. Bobby, stand up. The lawyer struggles to his feet, his legs unsteady beneath him. 12 years of partnership, of late-night strategy sessions and carefully constructed defenses, reduced to this moment of absolute betrayal and its consequences. Turn around. Bobby complies, his movements mechanical, automatic. Vinny studies the man's neck, noting the way stress manifests in muscle tension, the slight tremor that runs through his shoulders. Fear and guilt create their own signatures, readable to those with sufficient experience in both. 8 months, Vinny says conversationally. How much did they pay you? They had evidence, tax evasion, unreported income. Bobby's voice breaks on the words. I didn't have a choice. Everyone has choices. You chose money over loyalty, convenience over honor. Vinny's tone remains steady, matter of fact. Those choices have consequences. The building's elevator chimes softly in the distance, followed by the measured footsteps of someone approaching with purpose rather than casualness. Walsh and Torres exchange glances, their relief palpable. Backup, reinforcement, the restoration of tactical advantage. But Vinny has spent 3 decades surviving in environments where reinforcement often arrives in the form of additional enemies. He moves toward the window, maintaining clear sightlines to both entrances while keeping his weapon trained on Torres. How many? He asks quietly. 6 agents. Full tactical team. Torres answers without hesitation, calculating that cooperation might preserve his breathing privileges. Standard protocol for high-value target situations. Maria appears in the doorway, her timing precise and purposeful. Mr. Romano, there's been a gas leak reported on the 2nd floor. Building evacuation in progress. The fiction is transparent but effective. Gas leaks require immediate evacuation, no questions asked, no time for tactical assessment or strategic planning. Emergency protocols override federal operations, at least temporarily. Gentlemen, Vinny says, backing toward the service exit that Maria has positioned herself to keep clear. This conversation will continue, but under different circumstances, with different parameters. Walsh starts to speak, but Vinny cuts him off with a gesture that carries the weight of absolute authority. Bobby, you're coming with me. Insurance policy against federal enthusiasm. The lawyer's face crumples completely now, the last vestiges of professional composure dissolving into naked terror. He understands that his choices have transformed him from attorney to liability, from asset to burden that must be managed or eliminated. Torres makes a final desperate calculation, his hand moving toward his weapon with the suddenness of absolute commitment. But Maria's voice cuts through the tension with surgical precision. Agent Torres, your wife Linda was picked up for questioning 20 minutes ago. Something about unexplained deposits in your joint checking account. The detective freezes, his weapon half drawn, his world collapsing around him with the inexorable certainty of avalanche. The leverage he thought he possessed has been neutralized, replaced by vulnerability that extends far beyond his own survival. Vinny backs through the service exit, Bobby Chen stumbling ahead of him like a broken marionette. Maria follows, her cart creating a physical barrier between them and any potential pursuit. The building's fire alarm begins to sound, its electronic wailing providing cover for movement and confusion for response. In the stairwell, emergency lighting casts harsh shadows that transform familiar architecture into alien landscape. Their footsteps echo against concrete and steel, the sound multiplying and reflecting until it becomes impossible to distinguish approach from retreat. Where are we going? Bobby gasps, his voice thin with exhaustion and terror. Somewhere quiet, Vinny replies, his tone carrying implications that extend far beyond simple geography. Somewhere we can discuss your future without interruption. Maria leads them through service corridors that exist in the building's hidden anatomy, spaces designed for maintenance and emergency access, rather than human comfort. Her knowledge of these routes suggests planning that extends far beyond tonight's confrontation. How long have you been preparing for this? Vinny asks as they navigate a particularly narrow passage between mechanical rooms. Since Carlos died. Since I realized they would never stop. Never be satisfied with destroying just one family. Maria's voice carries the weight of absolute commitment. Some fights choose you, Mr. Romano. You don't get to walk away. Behind them, the sounds of tactical teams coordinating search patterns filter through the building's infrastructure. Radio chatter, footsteps, the mechanical efficiency of federal law enforcement adapting to unexpected circumstances. But the building is vast, its hidden spaces numerous, and Maria has had months to map every possible route and refuge. They emerge into a parking garage that smells of concrete dust and motor oil, sodium lighting casting everything in shades of amber and shadow. A single vehicle waits in the predetermined location, its engine running, its driver invisible behind tinted glass. Get in, Maria says, but it's not really a suggestion. The vehicle's interior smells of leather and fear. Bobby Chen sits pressed against the far door, his breathing shallow and rapid, while Vinny occupies the center position with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to uncertain transportation. The driver remains silent, focused on navigating Manhattan's late-night traffic, with the efficiency of someone following predetermined routes. Maria sits across from them, her cleaning uniform replaced by dark clothing that suggests preparation, extending far beyond tonight's events. The transformation is striking, revealing someone who understands operational security and tactical planning. The invisible janitor has become a strategist, and Vinny recognizes the shift with professional appreciation. "Where's my family?" he asks, though part of him already suspects the answer. Safe house. Federal protection detail was neutralized 3 hours ago. Maria's voice carries the flat precision of military briefing. Your wife and daughter believe they're participating in a routine security assessment. They're unharmed, but they won't remain that way if Torres's people locate them. The city slides past the tinted windows in streams of light and shadow, familiar landmarks rendered alien by changed circumstances. Vinny has spent 34 years building power in these streets, establishing territories and loyalties that seemed permanent. Now everything feels temporary, subject to revision by forces he's only beginning to understand. The recordings, Bobby whispers, his voice barely audible above the engine's hum. How long have you been watching? Watching, listening, documenting. Maria's eyes hold steady contact with him through the vehicle's dim interior. Your conversations with Torres, your strategy sessions, your discussions about client manipulation. Everything. Bobby's face crumples further if such a thing is possible. The man who's guided dozens of criminals through federal prosecution now confronts his own vulnerability, his own exposure to the machinery he's helped others navigate. The federal task force has 13 active operations, Maria continues, her voice carrying the weight of someone who's done extensive homework. Yours was the pilot program, designed to test new methods of evidence gathering and witness conversion. If successful, they plan to expand the methodology to other high-value targets. Vinny processes this information with the cold calculation of someone who's survived by understanding systems and exploiting their weaknesses. Maria isn't just seeking justice for her brother. She's dismantling an entire operational framework that threatens families like hers across the city. How many others like Carlos? 17 documented cases in the past 2 years. Low-level associates pressured into cooperation, then eliminated when they became liabilities. Maria's voice hardens. The task force operates under special authority, minimal oversight. They've created a system where witness elimination is standard protocol. The vehicle turns into an industrial district where warehouses stand like concrete monuments to economic decline. Sodium lighting creates pools of amber illumination, separated by vast stretches of shadow. The kind of landscape where conversations happen without witnesses and problems find permanent solutions. This ends tonight, Vinny says, though the statement raises more questions than it answers. Does it? Maria's challenge carries genuine curiosity rather than confrontation. You can eliminate Torres, Walsh, maybe even the immediate task force. but the system that created them remains intact. The authority that enables them continues to exist. Bobby makes a sound between a sob and a laugh, hysteria beginning to crack through his terror. You're talking about war with the federal government. That's not survival, that's suicide. Sometimes survival requires accepting unacceptable risks. Vinny replies, his tone carrying the weight of someone who's made similar calculations before. The alternative is systematic destruction, piece by piece, until nothing remains. The vehicle stops in front of a warehouse that appears abandoned, but shows subtle signs of preparation. Security cameras positioned at strategic angles, reinforced doors that suggest more than casual use, windows that have been replaced with materials designed to prevent observation rather than admit light. Maria exits first, scanning the surrounding area with practiced efficiency before signaling all clear. She's transformed completely now, her movements carrying the fluid precision of someone with military or law enforcement training. The cleaning woman was performance, carefully constructed invisibility that allowed her to gather intelligence and plan operations. Inside, she says, though again it's not really a suggestion. The warehouse interior has been converted into something between command center and safe house. Multiple workstations equipped with surveillance equipment, communication gear, and enough weaponry to supply a small army. Charts and photographs cover the walls, connected by colored string that maps relationships and operational timelines. How long have you been planning this? Vinny asks, studying the evidence of extensive preparation. Since Carlos died, but really since I was 12 and watched federal agents destroy my uncle's family over immigration status. Maria moves to one of the workstations, activating monitors that display real-time surveillance feeds from dozens of locations. Some people spend their lives avoiding systems that hurt them. Others decide to fight back. Bobby stumbles to a chair, his legs no longer reliable enough to support his weight. The warehouse's scale and sophistication clearly overwhelm him, suggesting resources and planning that extend far beyond what any individual could accomplish alone. You're not working alone. Network of families affected by federal overreach, some legal, some not, all committed to accountability. Maria's fingers move across keyboards with practiced efficiency, bringing up files and communications that reveal the scope of her operation. Your situation provided the perfect opportunity to expose their methods, while protecting potential future victims. Vinny studies the surveillance feeds, noting federal positions around key locations throughout the city. Torres's task force has mobilized completely, treating his escape as an existential threat rather than simple fugitive apprehension. The scale of response suggests they understand exactly how much damage his knowledge and Maria's evidence could inflict. They'll come here eventually. Yes, but not tonight. Maria indicates a map showing federal deployment patterns. They're operating under crisis protocols, which means predictable responses to predetermined scenarios. We have approximately 6 hours before they exhaust obvious possibilities and begin systematic searches. 6 hours to reshape the balance of power, to transform from hunted to hunter. Vinny has operated under similar constraints before, situations where time pressure forced rapid decision-making and commitment to courses of action that couldn't be reversed. Bobby, Vinny's voice cuts through the warehouse's mechanical ambiance. Phone, call Torres. The lawyer looks up with confused terror. What do I tell him? That you're being held hostage by a desperate criminal who's planning something stupid and violent. Vinny's tone carries mock sympathy. Play the victim. Convince him you're trying to help. Bobby's hands shake as he dials, but fear provides its own form of motivation. The call connects after 2 rings, Torres's voice sharp with stress and frustration. Bobby? Where the hell are you? He's got me, Mike. Romano's lost it completely. Says he's going to make everyone pay. Bobby's performance carries genuine terror, making the deception more convincing. I think he's planning to hurt federal agents, maybe their families. Location? I don't know. Warehouse district somewhere. He's got weapons, explosives maybe. Keep talking about sending messages. Bobby looks at Vinny desperately, seeking approval for his improvisation. Vinny nods, then gestures for him to continue. Mike, he knows about the task force operations. Everything. Says he's got enough evidence to destroy careers, maybe bring down the entire program. Torres's silence stretches long enough to suggest consultation with superiors, decision-making at levels far above his authority. When he speaks again, his voice carries different weight. Bobby, I need you to stay calm, keep him talking, we're going to get you out of this. He wants to meet. Exchange me for guaranteed safe passage for his family. Bobby's voice cracks with what sounds like genuine desperation. Midnight. Location to be determined. The call ends, and Bobby slumps in his chair as if the performance has drained him completely. The warehouse returns to its mechanical quiet, broken only by the soft hum of surveillance equipment and the distant sound of city traffic. They'll prepare a tactical response, Maria observes, studying communication intercepts on her monitors. Full team, probably federal marshals as backup. Good. Vinny's smile contains no warmth, only the promise of consequences carefully planned and systematically delivered. Let them come prepared for war. It'll make the documentation more compelling. Through the warehouse's high windows, dawn begins to pale the eastern sky, though the approaching light offers no comfort or promise of resolution. Some nights change everything, reshape the landscape of power and possibility in ways that can't be undone. This is becoming one of those nights. And in the growing light, Maria Santos continues her work, building cases that will destroy the system that killed her brother, while Vincent Romano calculates the price of survival in a world where loyalty has become commodity, and justice requires taking unacceptable risks. The immunity deal remains unsigned, but the balance of power has shifted completely. The hunted have become hunters, and the federal task force that thought it controlled the game is about to discover how quickly predators can become prey. I hope this psychological thriller has kept you on edge, watching Vinny and Maria turn the tables on corrupt federal agents. If you've made it this far, you're clearly invested in seeing justice served, even when it comes from unexpected places. Subscribe to join our community of viewers who appreciate complex moral stories, where the line between right and wrong isn't always clear. What did you think of Maria's transformation from invisible janitor to strategic mastermind? And here's the real question that's been building throughout this story. When the system is completely corrupt, do people like Vinny and Maria have any choice but to become exactly what they're fighting against? Share your thoughts below, because these moral complexities are what make stories like this linger long after the credits roll.